الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، وأشهد أنه الله الذي لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله الله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. أما بعد عباد الله إني موصيكم ونفس إياي بتقوى الله. It is one of the arkan or pillars, integrals, obligations of the khutbah of the two sermons to remind ourselves of taqwa, because this is the wasiyah, this is the advice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the people who came before, and it will remain for all people in all times. This whole affair ultimately is about taqwa, that having God consciousness, piety, being aware of the various things that we do, and that this is the purpose that we come together time and time again, Jumu'ah after Jumu'ah, day after day, is to remind ourselves of what is really important in life. And one of the great things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us on the tongue of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who no one guided humanity like he did sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That no one was guided like on the hands of any one person in human history like people that were guided on the hands of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is very clear in the famous story that we have of Sayyidina Musa, that he saw the immensity and the extent of the ummah of our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He actually asked Allah Ta'ala to make him from the ummah of Ahmed, from our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And our Prophet is the only universal Prophet. That even though that apparently that Christianity was universalized, is that the Prophet Jesus alayhi salam was never meant to be a universal Prophet. That he was sent to the tribe of Israel. But our Prophet is a universal Prophet. And as he reminded us sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that every Prophet was sent to their people specifically, but I was sent to all people. He was sent to everyone, all people in every time sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the greatest blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that we have transitioned into the modern world and our fundamental acts of worship are entirely intact, and we know the way that our Prophet prayed, we know the way that he supplicated, we know the way that he dressed, we know the way he interacted with people, details after detail after detail of his life we know. And that thus that his hadi, his way, has been preserved for us to be able to access even in our time. And so the organic tree of Islam is alive and it is living, and it gives fruit by the leave of its Lord in every season, that from the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this is what ours is about, you and I. Is that one of the great things that you will find is that our Prophet did sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because he was given the jawami al-kalam. He was given these comprehensive words, is that he had an ability to sum up in very short phrases overarching statements that have such deep wisdom packed within them, that if we follow that wisdom, that we will find that the floodgates of good will open up for us. And that this is a trait, this idea of being given the Jawami al-Kalim, even though that is from the khasa'is of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it is from his special characteristics, is that there are among his inheritors, that is the ulama al-amilin, the great scholars who act upon their knowledge in the subsequent generations, those that somewhat approximate that this idea of Jawami al-Kalim, of comprehensive words, that they have a portion of it. In other words, is that they have an ability to express that in very succinct words, deep meanings. That were someone just to follow this, is that they will find the doors of great goodness that open up for them. And I wanted to share today that a statement of one of the great scholars, who he himself says that I read books for 70 years. And that when we talk about read books, it's not like the way that you and I read books. That the real scholars, when they say they read books, that this means is that every day they're reading 50 to 100 to 150 pages every single day of their life. Every single day of their life. And the way that it normally works is that yes, when you study traditionally, that there are a number of texts that you memorize and you study the commentaries and that you master them, and then you get the tools of learning. Just as we have in a Western sense the quote-unquote tools of learning, you also have in an Islamic sense, there are certain tools of learning. That learning the basics of logic, the basics of grammar, of sarf, morphology, and various other sciences like balagha and rhetoric, and learning the basics of what we believe and so forth, and principles whereby which the scholars operate when they read these texts, that when you have these learning tools, the next stage then is to apply them, and is to read. And that this is what is called in Arabic mutala. And that reading is one of the most important things of all. We all should have that a daily litany of reading. We should be reading constantly. And we should be reading books of different sorts. The greatest book of all to read is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in addition to the Quran, we should also be reading that books are of benefit to us, that are of religious knowledge, and that I would also add to that general books, especially books that increase our social consciousness, that increase our awareness of the world in which we live, so that we can develop a perspective. Because there's no good in building your Iman, Islam, and Ihsan if you don't know how your Iman, Islam, and Ihsan could be undermined. And it's by reading books that give us a greater social consciousness and awareness of the world in which we live, that it will allow that the roots of our Iman, Islam, and Ihsan to go deeper, and they will prevent them from being uprooted and prevent them from being undermined. And in this regard, that this scholar said that I read for 70 years, pages upon pages and books upon books, and he said that of all of the things that I've read, because he was asked, of everything that you've read, what was the most beneficial advice in any book that you've ever read? And so he said the following. He says, for 70 years that I read, and he says that I didn't find any wisdom that was more beautiful and more relevant to the reality of the life that I lived than the following statement, which is related by Imam al-Jawzi, this great Imam radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And what is this statement? That it starts by saying, إِنَّ مَشَقَّةَ الطَّاعَةِ تَذْهَبُ وَيَبْقَى ثَوَابُهَا. Is that the difficulty of obedience, that it will go, and what will remain is its reward. And that this is the nature of the world, is that if you think about that the energy that you put in and exert yourself to get a bachelor's degree, or to get a master's degree, or to go through medical school, or to go through law school, or to do a specialization after that, or to get your PhD, that if you think about the difficulty that goes in and all of those hours and studies and tests and all of the effort that you put in, but the result of that is after you finish that program, is that you reap the benefits of that for the rest of your life. That there is a type of ease that comes along, even in a worldly sense, after you exert yourself. That let alone in an otherworldly sense, and also it's the same principle. And one of the interesting things that you will find is that the same principles that we have for the other world are the same principles of the dunya. Is that this is something that modern man has mastered to a certain degree. Is that the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the earth. Science is nothing other than studying the sunnah of Allah, the way that He normally deals with creation. That whatever it might be, whether it be physics, chemistry, or whether it be biology, or whether it be psychology, or whatever else, that you're essentially studying the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the earth, the way that He's made His creation, the way that human beings are, even anthropology, human behavior, sociology, the way that societies function, is that these are sunnah of Allah that relate to Allah's creation, but also that in the relation to the way that He that has created His creation subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so there's a lot of benefit in this, especially when you study it that from this perspective. And so that this remains, especially in a religious sense though, is that in the end of the day, as the Arabs used to say, and the sabahi that yahmad al-qawma surah, is that it's actually a sunnah, but in previous times there was people to get out of the scathing heat of the sun in the hot Arabian Peninsula, that they would travel by night. And that they would say that when they, in the morning, is that they would be very happy and they would praise how far that they've gotten because they traveled by night. In other words, is that you wake up in the morning, you're that much closer to your destination, you didn't realize that by putting in that effort, by traveling that, how far you had gotten. This is the same thing in the religious sense, is that you put in that effort, and that you realize, subhanAllah, that the fruits that you seek then after that. And so, that yes, ta'ah is difficult. There's 3 different breakdowns of patience. We have to be patient in avoiding what Allah has prohibited. We have to be patient in tribulation. But oftentimes we never thought about patience in relation to good deeds. You have to be patient in being persistent in good deeds. You have to be patient in establishing the prayer. It's not an easy thing to do. And then it opens up a whole other doors that what does it mean to have that patience then? And that how did our Prophet ﷺ describe sabr? Is that sabr, patience is like that light at the end of the tunnel. Our Prophet said was sabrul diya. Patience is radiance. It's like that light at the end of the tunnel. You're not just being patient for the sake of being patient. You're being patient because you see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that I'm traveling through that tunnel and just need to wait. But there is a gift that is happening at the end that is in store for me. That if I were to remain like this. So he's reminding us of this. But then also he said that وَإِنَّ اللَّذَّةَ الْمَعَاصِ تَذْهَبْ وَيَبْقَى عِقَابُهَا, is that the pleasure of disobedience, that it's going to also go. But what's going to remain is being taken into account for it. The pleasure is going to go. That in this, what he's really pointing to here is the importance of having an aql, of having an intellect. All of the words that we have in the Arabic language for intellect, they all relate to restraining. Right? The aql, the iqal, is that thing that's now some people wear on their head to cover their gutra, but previously it was put on, it's a camel hobble. It was put on the two legs of the camel, because a camel, you can't pin it up like a goat or a cow. Camels you had to let roam. When we were in Mauritania, is that we would see these camel drivers and that the camels have to roam. But if you don't put a camel hobble, they'll go too far and it'll be hard to find. But at least if you put a camel hobble and you tie their two legs together, they'll like hop around a little bit, but you'll know where to find them because they won't get too far. This is the essence of the intellect, is that the intellect is supposed to restrain us. That true intellect is what? It's to understand the awaqib al-umur. It's to understand that the end result of things, the final outcome of things. And the strength of our intellect is in determining in anything that we do, is the result of this going to be that good or is it going to be bad? And our theological definition of khair and shar, of good and evil, good is ultimately that which will benefit you in the next world. Evil is that which is ultimately going to harm you in the next world. In other words, is that there are many things, and this is the Quranic perspective, that appear to be evil but in reality that they're good, and many other things that appear to be good but in reality that they are evil. It is the intellect though that allows us to make this decision. But from here, that we can differentiate between two things. The higher intellect and the lower intellect. That the lower intellect is the brain. It's that which we share with any human being that has a neocortex. It's our ability to do mathematical equations and these types of things. But the higher intellect is in the heart. It's the reality of the intellect. It's that light that Allah Ta'ala places in your heart that enables you to distinguish between truth and falsehood, right and wrong, and to distinguish between that which is going to benefit you in reality in the next world and that which is not. And it is from here that we can understand the greatness of the prophets. And at the top of the list, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that no one had an akmal aqal minhu sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had the most humanly perfect intellect of all because he was the most aware of the end result of things. And thus that he conducted his worldly affairs accordingly in his life, accordingly in this world to prepare for that. But this is our affair. Is that it's very easy the way that things have been set up. We have hawa, we have desire, and the nature of desire, it's about instant gratification. And we live in a time where through modern technology that it's amplified our ability to have instant gratification, and thus has made patience that much more difficult, and thus has made it that much more difficult to have true intellect in the decisions that we make. And we need to be aware of that. And it is only to the degree that we can establish our intellect then, through that nurturing it with knowledge and nurturing it with piety, because both go hand in hand, that our spiritual state is just as important as our rational intellectual state, because that, as it has been said, قُطْرَةٌ مِنْ هَوَاء تُفْسِدُ بَحْرًا مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. One drop of passion can corrupt an entire ocean of knowledge. They go hand in hand. And that we tend to not take into consideration how affected our thoughts and decisions can become from that our lower desires. But our lower desires are about instant gratification, but at the same time Allah gave us an intellect to think about the consequences of what we do. In a worldly sense, and then in an ultimate otherworldly sense, about meeting our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what He's reminding us of, about the importance of intellect. And this is the goal of a Muslim. This is the goal of a Muslim, to attempt to perfect to the extent humanly possible your intellect. So that all decisions that you make is that you make them based upon sound knowledge, and you based upon really weighing all of the consequences, and you choose the best of all possibilities to do. And there will be times in your life where things will not be easy. There will be times in your life where you have to make difficult decisions, where there is no rosy outcome. You can't get out of the situation, and you might have 3 different choices to make. What decision are you going to make? This is where intellect comes in, and that you have to do your best. And this is why it's also so important to have a good opinion of other people, because that oftentimes when people make a decision in a particular circumstance, is that they might have made the right decision, but an outsider looking in might say, why did they do that? Look what happened. Well, they didn't know the whole picture. They didn't realize that there was no ideal outcome. Is that all of the outcomes were grim, but they actually made the right decision, even though that it doesn't appear to be the case, because they chose the least of all the negative consequences that would have happened in any given situation. And then he goes on to say, Kun ma'allah wa la tubali. That be with Allah, he says, and don't care what people think. Kun ma'allah, be with Allah. Wa la tubali. And don't care what other people think. As it has been said, Ridan nas ghayatun la tudrak. That you will never be able to please everyone. The contentment of people is an end that you will never ever take. And that if we all know this, that you finally work and you finally made this person happy, and then this person's upset, and you make them happy, and then another person's upset, and you make this person happy, and you're never going to make everyone happy. That very rarely will you find a congregation that comes together, and any household or masjid or wherever else, and everyone of all, right, is happy. But this is the important now to use intellect back to this other point. Because Yadullahi ma jama'ah, the hand of God is with the group. And that we should, as long as it's not a ma'siyah lahira, right, outwardly apparent act of disobedience, we should go along with the group. And this is a good thing to do, is that to be a part of the congregation. And to know that there is a blessing in coming together and making the joint decisions collectively. And having the ability to submit to that even when your opinion is not taken. This is what our teachers used to teach us, is that from the adab of shura, from the etiquettes of mutual consultation, is that everyone should feel the freedom to be able to voice their opinion. Anyone in this mosque, if there's something they don't like, they should feel open enough to go to the governing board and to tell them, this is something that I don't like. But they should also have the humility to understand and have a good opinion of those making decisions, that they're actually doing what's in the best benefit of the community. But then, that they should also have the following etiquette, is that our teachers used to teach us, is that if your opinion is accepted in the shura, in the mutual consultation, you make istighfar, and you repent to Allah. And if your opinion is not accepted, that you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the opposite of what you would normally think. Because that the nature of, if your opinion is accepted, is that you could just become, look at my opinion. That you start to be impressed with yourself, which is a disease of the heart. Is that if there's any good that comes on your head, it's from Allah. But these type of etiquettes, is that that they permeate into our communities, is that it makes our communities wholesome. It makes our relationships beautiful. And then he goes on to say, after saying, be with Allah and do not care. Be with Allah. Do things for the sake of Allah. وَمُدِّ يَدَيْكَ إِلَيْهِ فِي ظُلُمَاتِ اللَّيَالِ. That extend your hands to Him, that in the darkness of night. Extend your hands to Him in the darkness of night. Is that there is no wali min awliyaillah. That Allah praises the awliya. Ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. The awliya of Allah are the select of His creation. They are people that dedicated their lives to Him, and as a result Allah took over their affairs. Is that there is no wali amongst the awliya of Allah except that they've had an intimate connection tonight. They've had an intimate connection tonight. And that in the great story where we learned about the life of our Prophet ﷺ and how grateful of a servant he was, when Sayyidah Aisha was asked, what was the most amazing thing that you saw about the Messenger of Allah? And she wept. And she said, what wasn't amazing about Rasulullah? We don't even need to talk about her age. Look at her testimony to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After all of those years, she was asked about what was the most amazing thing about Rasulullah. Billahi alaykum, if we would go home and a third person would ask our wives, what was the most amazing thing about any one of us? What would our wives say? What would our wives say about us? That was there anything amazing? Was there anything good about us? Okay, he had a good traits, and if they were good people, they might have noticed the good and overlooked. But we all know, our wives know very well our idiosyncrasies. That's to say it lightly. They know very well our faults. They know very well our transgressions. And they know very well our egregious violations. Our wives know us very, very well. And from the blessing of Allah, Allah has made the marital relations a libas. They are a libas for you and you are a libas for them. And that this is a part of life, is that we have to veil one another. But this testimony of Sayyidah Aisha tells us about our Prophet. She would see him that night and day. She would see him even in what is apparently, it's much easier to have a good opinion of someone when you're listening to a class or something like that. But when you're with someone and you see them go through the various mundane things of life, this is going to be able to develop a true opinion of someone. She wept and said, what wasn't amazing about him? Everything about him was amazing. Everything about him was amazing. This is a testimony of his wife about him and who he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everything was about him amazing. But then she said that if there had to be something, she said, is that when nightfall came and all of the lovers that they were with their beloved, she said, is that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she described this intimately. Look at her, she was a faqihah, she was an alima, she was a jurist and a scholar, and that all of these fawaid and benefits that we get from all of the narrations. Sayyidah Aisha is one of the 7 mukthirin min al-riwayah, one of the 7 great narrators of hadith of all. And that she says in very intimate terms, she says is that he would come to me and he would lay next to me until his skin would touch my skin. Look at how the Prophet was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That this is a part of his marital relations. He would go until his skin touched my skin. And he said, and then he would say to me, Ya Aisha, ata'dhanini, do you permit me to stand in prayer before my Lord? This is the best of creation. He doesn't need Sayyidah Aisha's permission to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but this is the way the Prophet was. Is that when he wanted to do something, he wouldn't say, I'm not going to spend tonight with you, I'm going to pray. La, you put it in the form of a question. And he says, do you permit me to stand before Allah? And because of his prophetic way of dealing with her and other people, look at the response. She said, Ya Rasulullah, I want you to be close to me, but I prefer what you want over what I want. And she said, then the Prophet would stand up and he would go and he would make wudu. And she would say, فَأَحْسَنَ وَدُوهُ, and he would perform a beautiful wudu. She said, and then he would stand in prayer. And he would go into prostration. And he would go into the bowing position. And she said that he would weep and weep and weep. And she would sit there watching this. She didn't just go back to sleep because she narrated the hadith. She would watch the Prophet ﷺ. And she said until that the adhan for Fajr was called. And then she said that I asked them, oh Messenger of Allah, why do you do this? When Allah Ta'ala has forgiven all of your past and future sins and He was protected from sin to begin with, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then He said His famous words that we all have heard many, many times. أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شُكُورًا, that shall I not be that a thankful servant? But the point here is that this is the messenger. And all of the righteous who came before us, is that all of them had a relationship to the night. We should have a relationship with the night. And that the primary thing that we do at night is that even if it's 2 rakats, take this as homework when you go home tonight. Pray 2 rakats before you go to bed. Salāt al-Witr. Or try if you can to wake up 5 or even 10 minutes before Salāt al-Fajr and pray 2 rakats. And just to make a dua, even if it's only for 30 seconds. And you will, if you're consistent, find the sweetness. And that once you find the sweetness of night and what it means to be connected to the Beloved, there was one of the awliya that he used to say, for 40 years nothing brought me grief except the advent of dawn. Why? Because he had so much intimacy in night. intimacy with the remembrance and the meanings of the remembrance of his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, وَقُلْ يَا رَبْ, O Lord, مَا طَابَتِ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا بِذِكْرِكَ, that the dunya is not tayyib, it is not wholesome, and it's not fulfilling except with your remembrance. وَلَا الْآخِرَ إِلَّا بِعَفْوِكَ, and that nor is the akhirah going to truly be great except that if we receive your pardon. وَلَا الْجَنَّةَ إِلَّا بِرُؤْيَتِكَ, that Jannah is not really going to be great except if we gaze upon your noble countenance. He's saying we should say this in a state of munajah, in remembrance, in intimate conversation with our Lord. And then, that just as we direct our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, finally his final parting advice is in relation to creation. Safih wa samih, that pardon people and forgive them, overlook them. وَدَعْ الْخَلْقِ لِلْخَالِقِ, leave the creation to the one who created them. Leave the creation to the one who created them. He's not saying that we don't do amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. We do. We have to call to the good. We have to forbid the evil. We have to be moral examples for the right life in our day and age and in any time. Absolutely. But do so with a real intention that you want people to get better. Unfortunately, many people that tell people to do things or to not do things, it's almost as if the only reason they're doing it is that they want to show who they are in relation to the other person out of arrogance. Is that the whole purpose of amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar is to change what is happening. That's the whole purpose. Is that you want people to be better. But in the end, have mercy on people. We live in a very difficult time. Have mercy upon people. Have mercy upon people. Have mercy upon all of Allah's creation, but especially the believers. Have mercy. And by having that mercy, that is the bedrock, that foundational, that step whereby which that person will really change. If you're harsh with people, they will run away from you. You will distance them further. Have mercy on them. If you have mercy, they will change by the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Samih wa safih, pardon and forgive. وَدَعَ الْخَلْقِ الْخَالِقِ, leave Allah's creation to the Creator. In other words, don't judge them. That judge them insofar as that you know if wrong's wrong. Wrong is wrong. But have mercy on them. And leave them to Allah Ta'ala's creation. Leave His creation to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And focus on your own self while doing what you can to affect change in society. Because He says, فَنَحْنُ وَهُمْ رَاحِلُونَ, us and them, we're all rahilun, we're traveling, we're going, we're on a voyage, we're going to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. تِلْكَ أُمَّ قَدْ خَلَتْ, that nation has gone. لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ, they will reap what they have earned, and you will reap what you earn. So in other words, the primary focus is on the self, and you do what you can in a balanced way, helping His creation and bringing about change. And then finally, افعل الخير مهما استصغرته, that do good even if you deem it to be something small. Even if you deem it to be something small. There's a branch in the road, move it. That, be careful when you open your door so you don't nick the person's car who's next to you. That, fix the shoes. That clean up the bathroom when you leave. That do little tiny things. Right? Carry candy and give it to children when you go to Jumu'ah. These things seem like they're small, but his advice is that do all different types of good, that even if you deem it to be something small. فَإِنَّكَ لَا تَدْرِي أَيُّ حَسَنَةٍ تُدْخِلَكَ الْجَنَّةِ, because you do not know what good deed will enter you into paradise. And there are stories of people that these are things تُسْتَأْنَسْ بِهَا, that these aren't ahkam that you derive from or anything like that. Stories of people that have been forgiven. And one of these great stories that someone saw someone after that they died. And this was a great imam. And he said, مَا فَعَلَ اللَّهُ بِكَ, what did Allah do with you? And he says that He forgave me because I used to teach the Fatiha to elderly women. And another story, that a great imam, that they saw him in a dream after, and they said, what did Allah do to you? And he says that He forgave me because one time that I was writing, back in the day that they used to use reed pens with like inkwells, and he says that a fly came onto the tip of my pen when I had ink on it. And he said that I had mercy on that fly and I let it drink. And he says as a result of that, Allah forgave me. Allahu A'lam. We do not know what it is that we do, where it could bring about Allah Ta'ala's forgiveness. So never should we deem any act insignificant. perhaps that is the thing that inshallah ta'ala will bring about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. May Allah ta'ala bless us. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولجميع المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته الأكرمين والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وأشهد أنه الله الذي لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إلها واحدا وربا شاهدا ونحن المسلمون وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد عبده ورسوله أما بعد عباد الله أني أوصيكم ونفسي إياي بتقوى الله. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this deen, and this deen is for us. Allah does not need us, and He does not need our worship. That every single one of us should make a commitment that every day that the sun shines is that we want to better ourselves, is that we want to improve, is that we want to ascend, and we want to rise. Every day we want to do better than before. Every day we want to do better before. And that there is a very beautiful documentary I highly encourage everyone who watches, that it teaches us one of these meanings that is very much a part of our deen, but al-hikmatu dalatul mu'min. Wisdom is the lost property of the believers. It is titled Jiro, that the dreams of sushi. It's all about sushi, so don't get caught up whether you like sushi or not, that he's a bit impulsive about sushi. But the whole point is, look at the principles behind it. This is a man who spent his life mastering his craft, and his craft in this case happened to be sushi. But his whole point was, is if we take that meaning, we apply that same trait of what led him to be a famous sushi chef, that now that you have to book 2-3 months ahead of time to even get in to have dinner at his restaurant, is that if you apply those to the deen, the same thing will happen. As that every day that we want to do better, every day we want to be more in control of ourselves, every day we want to do more good than the day that we did before, until the day that we meet our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we do this, is that, as was mentioned in the beginning, is that when the difficulty of obedience is gone, is that what remains is the pleasure of an everlasting life, having attained the rida and the contentment of our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. ورضي الله تعالى عن سادة الخلفاء الراشدين أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وعلى جميع أهل بيت رسول الله المطهرين من الأرجاس وجميع صحابة رسول الله أجمعين وعلينا معهم وفيهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us and to have mercy upon us and bless us to be able to have hearts that are directed towards Him. May Allah ta'ala take care of all of our affairs and bless us to devote ourselves to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah ta'ala make everything easy for us inwardly and outwardly, and bring quick relief to us and to the ummah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Give us strength to be able to face our tribulations and be able to deal with them in a way that is pleasing to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma, anyone who needs anything and from the ummah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam worldwide, any type of strife or struggling that they're going through, Ya Rabbil Alameen, we ask you to take care of them, give them what they need, and bless them to be able to return unto you, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Return the ummah to Ya Rabbil Alameen. Bless us to be able to give life to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the remembrance of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life. Bless us to have life through the Quran and life through the statements of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, living and dying upon La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Awamakum Allah, awakum Allah, nasrakum Allah. Inna Allah ya'mur bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'idukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Udhkuru Allaha al-'azim yadhkurkum washkuru 'ala ni'matikum wa la dhikrullahi akbar.